Turn to somebody, let them know you're glad they're here on a Super Sunday. We have a very special thing coming up on a Super Sunday. The way you make it better is with water baptism. And we're excited about water baptism at this church. And so we're going to do that now. And we're going to welcome Bob Cavany to the stage. Or behind the stage. Or I think you're supposed to be in the water.
You know, this is, can you hear me? Can you hear me out there? You know, there's probably nothing more important that happens in a church than water baptism. This is the most special thing that happens because this is the time when we see another person becoming a part of the family. And this is what I talked to you about this morning, because we're the family of God here. And now you're a part of our family because of your receiving Christ as your personal Savior. And this is Nellie Fernandez, and she's excited about Jesus this morning. You just share whatever is on your heart, honey. Go ahead and just do it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Good morning. God bless you all.
You don't have to be so close.
Boy.
What's happened to you?
Well, I've been lost for many, many years. I've had my ups and downs, and I just have not been happy. Neither on the inside or outside, as I was not happy. 4 weeks ago, I walked through that door, and it just felt amazing, like fireworks going through my body. And everybody here is so nice, and they greet me with love, and I love all of you guys. And I'm happy to be here, and I'm ready to take my life to the next step. Oh, I'm ready. And I want to change. I want to feel God. I want to feel His love, His fire. I want to take it all in. I want to change. And I'm just so happy in having my mom always giving me advice. And she's always been there for me, and words cannot express how proud I am to have you in my life as well. And I'm ready. I don't know what else to say. I'm just happy.
I was thinking as I was listening to her, what a great evidence that she has been born again, to stand there and say that I wanna. I thought of a new little baby. When they're born, that's the first thing. I wanna, feed me, I wanna. She's a newborn baby, amen? And she wants to for Jesus, don't you?
Yes.
See, that's an evidence that you're a child of God. So the Bible says repent, change your mind and be baptized And so we're going to baptize you right now. Remember what we did? Your nose, yeah. So, Nellie Fernandez, it's such a privilege and an honor to baptize you this morning. Move forward a little bit more. And the Lord is so pleased with you this morning. He's excited about you more than any of us, I believe. And we love you. We're going to baptize you right now in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, that name which is above every name, Jesus Christ our Lord. Praise God. Praise the Lord.
Thank you, Jesus. Yes, Lord.
Amen. So let's just go ahead. We're going to worship God. Isn't that awesome when someone can share a testimony about God touching their life? And that's what we pray each and every day for each one of us, that God just shows up in our life in a powerful way, in an exciting way, that we don't just serve a God who's far off, that doesn't care about what's going on in our life, but he's right there. He's right with you, and he wants to be an integral part of each day of your life. Amen? That's why we celebrate and we honor him, because he loves us so much. We thank you, Lord. So let's go ahead and stand up, and we're just going to give this time to him.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Jesus.
Amen. God, we just say, open up the heavens, Lord. We thank you. Amen. that you would be able to lead us and guide us into all truth, that we would be able to know your presence, that it would be familiar to us. Give us eyes to see, Lord. We thank you, Lord, what you want to do. Come and have your way.
You
sing. No other name but Jesus, Jesus. My heart will sing. No other name. Come on, let's lift him up to Jesus, Jesus.
seated, but let's stay in a spirit of worship and prayer. Just worship and prayer. Because after our worship, we come with thanksgiving and praise. And so now we're coming before the Lord with our requests. You know, in the Old Testament, they would slay the animal for a sacrifice, shed the animal's blood, and serve our blood. What did they do with the animal after they slay the animal? What did they bury it? What did they do? They burned it on the altar. And the Bible says that God would smell that savor, that sweet savor of that sacrifice. Now this morning, I was on the grill for some of my lunches, and I smelled the sweet savor of that meat. You understand? There's some good barbecues there. So, my point is, I was attracted to the aroma. Getting hungry, Pastor? I was so attracted that of the 4 hamburgers, one of them disappeared. I don't know it disappeared. My little tummy right there. So I was now, this is all about prayer. When you're married or you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, or your spouse, the guy wears a cologne, are you attracted to that aroma? Attracted doesn't repel your way, right? Are you in there, buddy? So you're attracted, you see. So in Revelations, the Bible says that the prayers are, in a sense, the bowl before the Lord, and the aroma is wafted up to the Lord. This is symbolism, but this is reality. And He's attracted to our prayers. Someone say amen. He's attracted to our prayers. So we have this beautiful, it actually says miracle chest. And there's little pieces of paper. We need more, Pastor. Okay? And pencils. They're over there. And we write our prayer requests and put them in this box. And they become a sweet savor to the Lord. So we're going to pray for them right now. We know the Lord is attracted to our prayers. He's not only attracted to our prayers, He's attracted to the action. He's like a hate that. He takes action. Amen? Can you say amen? So let's lift up these prayers, and then we'll pray also for those in authority. Father God, everyone reach your hand out to the prayers that are in this box. If you don't have a prayer in this box, just put your hand on your tongue. Your prayers are being spirit. Father, right now we lift this up. Let's lift it up, beautiful wife. We lift up as a sweet savor to you the prayers of God's people here at Resonate Life Church. Take them in, Lord God, and we know you dispatch angels. You dispatch angels when we pray. The Holy Spirit comes into that situation, and you draw people into that situation. So when you're praying for your loved one in Colorado or California or across the world on the battlefield, God's angels go, dispatching like thunder. We pray when we bring it to pass to the Lord. Amen? You believe it? Give the Lord a big hand. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! Hallelujah for prayer. Now, Father, we lift up our President, President Trump, just as we lifted up President Obama. Our prayers exactly the same. Lord, with the enormous responsibility they have, that you would give our President wisdom in all of his decisions, and that you would give our Congress, our Senate, our House of Representatives wisdom to work on behalf of the people and not in partisan politics in our country. Lord, a lot is at stake. Dangers are everywhere. World War II, the Japanese committed Harry Carey, killed himself to take out 10. Now, terrorism, they blow themselves up to kill not warriors, not their opponent, warriors, to kill innocent women, innocent children, innocent men. Let's bind that spirit right now. We bind that spirit of terrorism. We bind that spirit, that end-time spirit that takes from Islam and attacks. And we break the spirit of that because there's no longer any reason for shedding of blood or blowing people up. Because Jesus, he blew himself up. He shed his own blood for every person of every race and every color. And we accept that blood, amen? We accept that blood shed upon the United States and upon our brothers. And everyone said, in Jesus' name, thank you, Pastor.
And you don't make it to the NFL half-heartedly. And you don't make it to heaven unless you love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind, and all of your strength. Give Jesus a big hand for that. Hello. Just going to move you right over here so we can do our kickoff if you'll get ready. We're going to kick off our first quarter. We have Rob Williams here, and he is going to get things started, all right? You can use the other football there, Rob, if you want, whichever's better. All right, welcome. Let's go ahead and show that video first, and then we'll have our kickoff.
Crayons for the Children's Ministry, $8. Diapers for the nursery, $12. Bibles provided for students, $80. Care packages to missionaries, $200. Knowing what you give makes a difference.
Okay, if our media team, let's try courage.
Athletes, every one of them unique. Their events are different. Their training is diverse. Their journey is anything but ordinary. And yet in the middle of all that uniqueness, there's one thing they have in common. One part of their journey that's consistent across all others. Every person who's ever played any sport at any time must at all times and in all ways overcome. And it's not only folks from the world of sports, businessmen and businesswomen. moms, and grandparents. Students who are finishing and only just beginning. All must learn to push through adversity and to experience their reward on the other side. Because the greatest rewards are always given to the ones who overcome.
One more chance.
It's good. Robbie.
Good morning. First of all, thank you, Pastor Nick, for the opportunity to speak this morning. Football is by far my favorite sport. I like basketball, but if my two teams were on and it was between one or the other, it'd be football every time. No question. Today, the title of my message is, Do You Trust the Coach? We have two teams playing here today, and it's two different coaches. The last game was 2 weeks ago. There was a Pro Bowl last week, which is just an all-star game. But today's the Super Bowl. So they've had 2 weeks to prepare for the team that they're going against, right? So the coach is going to look at the other coach's tendencies. He's going to go back to everything that he's done this year, and they're going to watch hours and hours of film. They'll go back even to last year. If he was a college coach, they're going to pull up college film. They're going to want to see everything that this coach has ever done so that they can be ready for any particular play, situation that might happen during the game. And that would go down to Pee Wee football as well. So the coaches are trying to come up with that game plan. They do that through watching film and studying the other team. So a week ago, after all this film study, the coaches have their plan together and they start to practice. And they say, this is what we're going to do. This is the looks that we're going to get, and we're going to respond in this way. So they practice, and today's the game. Somebody is going to be doing everything right, watch hundreds of hours of film, got their team in a position to win, came up with a good game plan that would work if executed properly. But how many know that somebody's going to be down in the first quarter? Somebody's going to be down at halftime. And that team has a choice. Do we trust the coach? Do we stick with the game plan? They put in the time and the effort to say, if we do this, we will be successful. So will we continue on and stay with the game plan? Or will the players just say, hey man, this is too big of a game. We have to win. You only get to the Super Bowl once in your life, if ever. Unless you're the Patriots. Man, that is so true. What is wrong with that team? They're so good. This mic just seems hot, and it's down low. So if you could turn it down just a little bit, that'd be awesome. So the players could get together. The quarterback could say, man, I don't like the tempo of the offense. I don't think we're really jiving. I don't think we're moving the ball well. So despite what the coach says, man, we're going to go into hurry up because I think that's going to give us the best opportunity to win. The defense might be saying, man, this zone coverage, they're just eating us up. They're finding the holes in our coverage, and I think we need to go man on man. We need to go man coverage. So those players are going to have that going through their minds and heads that say, hey, do we trust in the preparation of our coach to put us in a position to win, or do we take matters into our own hands? And when we take matters into our own hands, that's when we end up probably most likely losing, because the plan was good, just needs to be kept on. You never know, third quarter, they're going to change it up, and you kept doing what you were doing, and that provided the way for you guys to win, because they were like, okay, the other team's going to change it up, so we have to change it up. We have to be ready. And for the team just to keep on going, it's probably not always expected for that team to do. Okay, so that's my football analogy. Done with that, moving on. I'm going to read you a story this morning. It's going to look at Israel and see how they trusted their coach, which is our Heavenly Father. So to set up this story, there was a man and his concubine that were walking to Jerusalem, and they stopped at Gibeah in the middle of their travels. And Gibeah was the home of the Benjaminites. So what happened was, to sum up 19 verses, is they surrounded the house and to kill the guy, but they ended up raping his wife and killing her. So the man cut his wife up into a bunch of pieces and sent it out to all the sons of Israel, to all the tribes. And just to say, look at this wickedness, this sin, this injustice that was done by our brothers, right? Because this is talking about the tribes of Israel. So our sons, the Benjaminites, did this injustice. And so the men of the sons of Israel said, we will not go back to our homes, we will not go back to our tents until this injustice is taken care of. So they went to their to the Benjaminites, and they said, hey, listen, we need to take care of this wrong. Whoever did this, send out the men so that we could take care of this injustice and it'll be over. The Benjaminites said, no, we're not going to do that. So, sons of Israel got together and said, guys, it's tough, but we're going to have to go up against our brothers. Like, there was a wrong, and they're not repentant. They're not going to take care of the sin, so it's up to us to do that. So here we go. In Judges 20, verse 18, it says, the men of Israel rose and went up to Bethel and asked God and said, which one of us should take the lead to battle against this tribe of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah should go up first. Then the fighting men of the sons of Israel arose in the morning and camped up against Gibeah. The sons of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and struck to the ground on that day 22,000 men of Israel. But the fighting men of Israel took courage and strengthened themselves and again set their battle lines in the same place they formed it in the first day. The sons of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening and asked the Lord, shall we advance again to battle against the sons of our brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, yes, go up against them. So the sons of Israel came against the sons of Benjamin the second day. And the fighting men of the tribe of Benjamin went out of Gibeah against them the second day and struck them down to the ground, the sons of Israel, 18,000 men, all of whom were swordsmen. Then all the sons of Israel and all the people went up to Bethel and wept, and they sat before the Lord and fasted that day until evening and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the sons of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there at Bethel in those days, the house of God. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, ministered before it in those days, saying, "Shall we yet again go out to battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin, or shall we quit?" And the Lord said, "Go up, for tomorrow I will hand them over to you." So Israel set men in ambush around Gibeah. The fighting men of the sons of Israel went up against the sons of Benjamin on the third day and placed themselves in battle formation against Gibeah, as at other times. The Benjamins went out against the army and lured them from the city, and they began to strike and kill some of the people, as at other times, on the highway, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah. And in the open country about 30 men of Israel. And the Benjaminites said, "They are defeated before us, as of the first." But the sons of Israel said, "Let us flee and lure them from their places and away from the city to the highways." Then all the men of Israel got up from their places and placed themselves in battle formation at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel who were in ambush rushed from their place. Then the 10,000 choice fighting men from all of Israel came against Gibeah, and the battle was hard and fierce. But the Benjamites did not realize that disaster was about to strike them. The Lord struck down the tribe of Benjamin before Israel, so that the sons of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day, all of whom were swordsmen. So the Benjaminites realized they were defeated. Then men of Israel gave ground to the Benjamites because they realized on the men in ambush whom they had placed against Gibeah. Then the men ambushed quickly, rushed and attacked Gibeah, and the men in ambush also deployed and struck the entire city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in ambush was to I'm sorry, just lost my spot. And the men in ambush was that they would make a great cloud of smoke arise from the city. So the men of Israel turned in the battle, and Benjamin began to strike and kill 30 men. I'm almost done. I'm sorry, it's a lot of reading. For they said, "Certainly they are defeated before us in battle." But when the smoke signal cloud began to rise out of the city in a column of smoke, the Benjaminites looked behind them, and behold, the entire city went up in smoke to heaven. There's 3 or 4 more verses, but it all says the same thing. They eventually won. So what I want to look at today, and hopefully you followed me, tracked with me good, but it was a lot, I apologize. There are times in our life, like the children of Israel, where God said, "Go to this city and plunder it, but from this city I want you to give it all in an offering." And some of the people took a few of the items and hid it, and there was sin. There was other times that God said, "Go in and kill all the animals and all the people," and they took some animals or left the king alive or whatever the case may be, and that was sin against God. But there's other times in our lives where we may be doing everything right, and it's not working out. Right? Benjaminites had sinned against a brother in the tribe of Israel. So they went out after him and said, we have to take care of this injustice. And God said, send out Judah. So they went out, they faced their brother, and 22,000 men died. But the point was, they came back to the Lord, they fasted, they prayed, they inquired again, Lord, what should we do? He said, go back out. So they went back out, lost another 18,000 men. How many times does that happen in our lives? And we question God, did I hear you clearly? Am I in your will? And God put us in, when we were born into a battle. And God's just saying to us today, whatever situation you're going through, if I told you something and the opposite is true, will you come back to me? Do you trust me? Will you pray again? So whatever's in your life today, I have to wrap up. If there's sin in your life, then take care of the sin. But remember that we're in a battle. Don't just get discouraged if you're doing everything right and losses are happening or you're not getting the victory in certain situations. It's a relational thing with God, and He just wants to know today, do you trust Him? And if you trust Him, will you come back to Him in prayer and fasting and just say, God, I might not be seeing it, but I'm not going to accuse you, and I'm not going to blame myself. Help me to see what it is, what I need to do. But like I said, it's fun for him,
Tina,
even though it's not for us, because he's just drawing us to himself, and he just wants to see, yeah, this stuff is happening. Yeah, you're taking losses. It looks like you're not winning. But I'm never going to send you into a battle that you won't be victorious in. Will you trust me, and will you pray again?
The challenge flag has been thrown on the field. And we're not going to be challenging the team today. The challenge is to you. The challenge is, who are you trusting in? We have one great coach. There's many coaches in the world. There's the doctor coach. There's the financial consulting coach. There's all these different coaches that are trying to tell us what we should do and how we should do it. But are we truly seeking the one and only coach, the life coach? Because the doctor's reports don't matter, the bank statements don't matter, the problems in life don't matter if we're following the one and only coach. So the challenge flag was being thrown to, who are you following today? Well, who is the coach in your life today? Make him your coach.
Wow, good way to start off this game. Nate had some pretty good nuggets there. Just these guys get ready. They have a lot of studying, a lot of practicing to do. They got to be steadfast and reach that ultimate goal that they're trying to push forward to.
That's right. They also got to really listen to the coach. I mean, it's a battlefield out there. They got to, put their head down and just go for it.
I love that he was talking about trusting the coach, because sometimes even in life, it's the very beginning of something that we're starting out. And when you're in the first quarter of a game and you get down by so many points, it's hard to come back. It's hard to stay in the game. So we do that in life too.
Yeah, listen to the coach. Coach knows best, right?
Amen. Kicking? Halftime? terrible. Pastor Dan.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you guys. It's good to be up here for the second time today, you know. It's exciting to be in the house of God. And you know, Super Bowl Sunday, I'm with Nate. It's one of my favorite sports. I'm a huge hockey fan, but football, if I had to choose, I'd probably pick the football game, you know. Especially, well, if it was a 7-game series with hockey, I might, you know, I would only miss one game, so it doesn't work out that way. But anyway, this is an exciting game because what we're talking about today is the game changer, all right? On each team, there's somebody that has to be accounted for, otherwise you're not going to win. It's just that simple. The Atlanta Falcons have a guy on their team named Julio Jones. He's a wide receiver. I guarantee you, every single person on the Patriots team right now, as we sit here, we're thinking about God, they're thinking about Julio Jones. Because if they do not stop Julio Jones, the Patriots will lose. Simple as that. Now, on the Patriots side, there's a guy named Tom Brady. He's a quarterback. He runs the entire offense. I guarantee you right now, as we're here thinking about God, the entire Atlanta Falcons team is thinking about Tom Brady. Because if you don't stop Tom Brady, you lose. Just that simple. How important a game changer can be, it really affects everything. That's why they get the name, the game changer. One of the cool things, though, is you don't just all of a sudden wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to change the game today. You know what, I ate my Wheaties, and I'm just going to be able to like run all over the field, and nobody's going to stop me. Does it happen that way? No. Where does the game changing take place? In the secret place. What you do on your own time when nobody's looking, the hours, the bloody knuckles, all that stuff, the sore joints, the muscles, the studying, the listening to the coach, to having all that brainstorming and preparation and everything being able to take into account what's about to happen. How do we account for Tom Brady? That doesn't happen on the field. It happens the 2 weeks before the game, dealing with the coach as well. He's going to set that game plan, and that game changer is in preparation mode. As soon as that last game was over, went to preparation mode because they know what it takes for them to change the game is what they do in the secret place. That's where the game is won. That's where the game is lost, is the preparation. Of course, you got to go out and actually, put those plans into action, which is what Nate was talking about. And that is how everything is set up. But it all boils down to the preparation. What you do in the secret can either hurt or help you. We always, be sure your sins will find you out. The things that you keep hidden, someone's going to know about it eventually. And that's true, and we got to be careful about what we do. But what also can affect your daily life is what you do in secret that's a benefit. The studying, the preparation, the seeking the Lord, the reading the Bible, the quiet time, the worship music, being in the presence of God on a daily basis so you recognize what it looks like when you step onto the field and you're there. You're ready to go. Nate spoke on Wednesday, and he said something that was really awesome. And he was talking about the disciples, how they went to cast out this demon with this kid, and it didn't work. And they had done this before. They had seen the power of God. They had been active with the presence of God, or Jesus, and the power of his name all throughout the city. But then they come to this kid, and they couldn't, nothing happened. And Jesus said, some of these come out with prayer and fasting, and then obviously he took care of it. But one of the things Nate said was that Jesus at that moment, it doesn't say that he was fasting at that very second. So if it comes out through prayer and fasting, then how was he able to cast out the demon besides the fact that he was Jesus? Because every morning and every night he's praying. And all the other times that he's fasting, he stores up that power of fasting in the secret place when nobody's watching, nobody's looking, and he's fasting, and he's building up that power so that when he stepped out, he was able to do things that other people couldn't do because he's a game changer. So that's what we're talking about this morning. It really boils down to that. Because everybody, when you're in the Super Bowl, you're good. Everybody on the team is good. The coach is good. But it's about who is going to take that extra step, who is going to diligently work hard, who's going to put the time in so that they would be successful and have that edge. Lots of scripture verses in the Bible that talk about work. Just a simple one. Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human matters. Just that simple verse that we can apply in everything that we do, whether we're a janitor, whether we're the president, we'll do it unto the Lord, all of your might, everything you got, wholeheartedly, giving everything you have, not just half-heartedly, but going full force. Why? Because you can be a game-changing janitor. There's puke in the cafeteria, or either one. It could be either one, I don't know. I don't go to elementary school anymore, it could be both. But you need to be a game-changing janitor in that moment. You know what I mean? You're a businessman. You could be the game changer. You could, wherever you're at. And I was thinking about this the other day. Where are the influencers? Where are the people that rise up and say, you know what, no matter where I go, I'm going to be successful because I put the time in, but I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it because the Lord is with me. And then all of a sudden, in the business world, people's lives are getting changed and people are coming to know Jesus because it's not about business anymore. Because you put the time in about working hard in business, but now you're there to influence people for the kingdom. You're a doctor and you've studied and you've done all that stuff and you're there, you know how to fix a broken arm, but as you're preparing that cast, you're praying because you're an influencer. You're a game changer for that person. You're spreading Jesus. Where are the influencers? What job do you have? Do you sit in a cubicle and the person next to you, are they saved? Come on. Does your boss know that you're a Christian and you're never going to work on Sunday no matter what he says because you don't care about losing your job because you'll put the time in every day of the week except Sunday because you got to be at church because you're a game changer? It's what it's all about. When you start to be that person, guess what? Everybody notices. All of a sudden, people have to plan for your arrival. People have to worry about what they're doing so that it affects how they're doing. You're working a business. You're a real estate agent. You're selling 100 homes a year. The guy next to you only sold 10. Well, all of a sudden, he's got to be worried about what's going on and the comfortability of where he's at. So now he has to step it up. In a church setting, people are down on their faces, on their knees, or waving flags, and we're dancing. And then all of a sudden, we have, in any church, not here, just people hanging out. There's people that are here that are being an influence for the kingdom of God and the presence of God, even on a Sunday morning, and they're beginning to affect the atmosphere in here. They're beginning to influence the people around them, not because it's a production, but because when the Spirit of the Lord shows up and it becomes evident, people want to taste it. They want to see it, they recognize it, and they realize, oh, I got a plan for that now. If I come to church on Sunday, I resonate life. I mean, it's not comfortable anymore because God shows up and I either got to acknowledge that or, that's where we're at. Where are the influencers? Where are the game changers? In your place of work, in your home, at church. Let's all make that commitment today that, hey, guess what? People are going to start planning for me. Not in a showboat way, not in a, I'm better than anything, but because you put the time in. Because the Holy Spirit is active in your life, because you're spending time in the Word and you're worshiping in your car and you're doing all the things that begin to build up so that when you need to draw on that experience, it's there. Julio Jones today is going to draw on the experience that he has all through his whole life catching a football. And today he's going to catch a football. Could be for a touchdown. Tom Brady is going to draw on the experience that he's had throwing a football. hundreds of thousands and maybe even 1,000 times a day for his whole life, so that when the time comes, when he's in that moment to affect the game, his preparation will spell victory. And that's what it's about this morning. So each one of us have the ability to affect where we're at, and to be that game changer that we need to be. Matthew 5:16. Once you've done the preparation in the secret place, let your light so shine before men that others may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. That's what it's about. Amen. Why the flag? I don't understand the flag.
We have a flag on Pastor Dan.
I lost the game because of the ref, man.
Holding.
I blame the refs.
Holding. And instead of taking away 10 yards, we're going to give you 10 yards. Because to be a game changer, you have to hold on to the Word of God. You have to be locked in, and you have to do the stuff in the secret place, holding on to the promises of God that you will be victorious, that you will be the head and not the tail, that you will be the lender, not the borrower. These are promises from God, and you can hold on to those. So Dan, we commend you and give you 10 plus yards for holding on to the Word of God.
I love that. Pastor Dan was talking about what we do in the secret, and of course Tom Brady, a few years ago, what he was doing in the private got him suspended for, I don't know, a few games from deflating the balls. Of course I had to bring that up. So what you do in the quiet that isn't beneficial can sometimes come out too.
Well, you know, to be a game changer, you got to be ready in season and out of season. And their whole life has been a preparation for this day. So let's just see if they can take out the big dogs. What do you think?
Sounds like a good plan. It goes to show that everyone on the playing field is so important, and it will impact the game. So every one of us, how important we are and how we'll impact our day and everybody else's lives. So let's keep going.
Timeout, halftime festivities.
Woo, woo. Woo. Yeah.
Awesome. Are you enjoying it so far? This is awesome stuff here. And Paul, we got to give Paul a break and give his hands a rest. You know, it's like, wow. Well, you know, there's rules in football, Becky.
There are?
And there's rules in the kingdom.
Oh, I know that's right.
And there's some kingdom rules that are scratch your head type rules. Like, if you want to get, you have to give. You know, that just goes against our natural mind.
That's right.
And maybe today, a lot of you have leaned on your own understanding in the area of giving. You know, God, I don't know if God really meant, 10%. I think he just wants me to give something. But friend, God meant 10%. He wants you to give him everything, really.
You mean that some football players might say, hey, ref, that was really close. That you need to count that as a touchdown, and the ref didn't go for it?
Right.
Kind of like that?
Because he wasn't quite there.
He wasn't quite there. It's not a touchdown until it gets all the way in the end zone, right? That's what that's called.
And that 10-yard, yeah, that's right. You did good.
Thank you. I've been studying. No.
But football, we're talking about the 10th part that belongs to the Lord. You have 10 yards that you have to get in football. And then you have to go for another 10 yards. And eventually you make it into that end zone. But I want to encourage you to dig deeper in your resolve, because God wants us to serve him with all of our heart. Yeah. And if you tip God, if you give him 6%, say, this is all I can afford, so I'm going to give him 6%. Do you think that God really stands up and gets all joyful and goes, woo, I just love my the way my people give? No. It goes back to what Nathan was saying about inquiring of the Lord, and am I doing it his way?
That's right. The coach's way. Trust in the coach.
Trust in the coach. This is the big thing this year. You know, we're still in the beginning of February now. So, and I want to encourage you and challenge you that as for me and my house, like Joshua said, we will serve the Lord.
Amen.
And we're going to do what he says. We're going to inquire of him, like Nathan was saying, in prayer and fasting. And then we're going to do it. We're going to dig down deep and give God all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind, all of our strength. We're going to give them all. That's how you achieve to the greater things that God has for you. Because he wants to give you more. He wants to give you more spiritual things and the real treasures in this life. But we have to be faithful in the little manna. All right, so just before, well, we're going to pray right now and ask our ushers to prepare. God, we just acknowledge you. We thank you, Father, for this opportunity to believe you in this offering and to be obedient in our tithes and in our offerings. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. But before we do this, before we take up the offering, we also want you to include in this offering missions. You know, in football, they have a term called go long. Almost. It was my throw, I'm sure. So sorry about that.
Julio Jones better catch those today. Julio Jones better catch those today or Brady's going to walk away with it.
But here's your chance to go long.
That was a great pass.
Your money can leave this building and literally travel to all of our different missionaries that we support all over the globe. And so go long with your giving today, not just your tithes, which we just talked about, but also your offerings to the Lord. Go long and support missions. Every month we take up a missions offering. Every month the first Sunday of the month. And on Mission Sunday, you might think, well, what should I do? Give me something to aim at. Each of our missionaries we support $30 a month. Now we have how many missionaries? About in our 20s. So it adds up almost $800 a month that we're giving to our missionaries. So if you're looking at a ballpark, you could say, you know what? This year, I'm going to believe God and I'm going to trust him to give $30 a month to support one of those missionaries. I want to encourage you to step up your game, Super Bowl, and this year in the area of giving. God bless you. Just before the announcements roll, Becky has a few.
Okay, and you can go ahead and give your offering this morning. The Lord bless you as you do. Just want to give you a couple of new hot announcements just before our announcement loop. But this Tuesday, if you're a woman in this place, I want you to know about a really awesome new women's Bible study. Sister to Sister is sponsoring. I know you got one of these if you're a lady, but a new 8-week Bible study that our very own Pastor Carol Manasseh is going to be teaching right in the orange room there. And maybe she'll have to move it right into here because we'll get so many. But it's at 10 o'clock. And if you ever wondered, how can I hear the voice of God? Well, she's going to be teaching the next 8 weeks how we get in position to hear the voice of God. So you don't want to miss it. It's going to be awesome. And starting next Sunday morning at 9 a.m. in the fellowship hall for the next 3 weeks, if you're interested in becoming a member of Resonate Life Church, well, we have a special class that's for you for the next 3 weeks to find out who are we, what are we doing, and how can you get involved. So next week, starting at 9 o'clock, meet Pastor Don Struble. That's going to be in there, help with, and you can start walking the life track with us.
Amen.
And that's going to be awesome. Okay, so roll the rest of the announcements.
Hey, welcome to Resonate Life Church. I'm Margie and I'm Kaylee. And, hashtag. I forgot. Be sure to check in
I'll
on
penalize
Facebook
you all.
and hashtag RLC.
I'll penalize you all.
And also hashtag I will resonate life. On Wednesday
It's so
nights, we
hard
have
when
a
you really
service
don't
for
have
every
nothing
single
written
one,
out
so
and you're
please
just
make
trying
sure
to
to
wing
come
it.
at
You
7
know, it's like,
o'clock. Doors
yeah,
open
but
at
it's
6.
like you don't ever feel like you're
Those
really good. You know what I
applying
mean?
for membership
But I mean, y'all
should
too.
meet
Does
in
it
the
feel
fellowship
weird?
hall at
It's like,
9
man,
a.m.
why do I
for
feel like I'm on the
classes,
hot
February
seat?
12th, 19th, and 26th. If you'd like to come, be here at 9 a.m. in the fellowship hall with our Life Track membership class.
On February 12th, we're going to have Harry Tripp here in service again with us. We've had him the past couple years. He's an amazing powerhouse speaker, so don't miss it. And a great singer. He's got like the soul, you know? He's got the pipes. Sunday, February 19th, we're going to have the Bloodmobile in our parking lots. So please make sure to eat and drink lots of water so you can give blood and save a life. Resonate Life Church. Reaching people, renewing minds, restoring lives. You get a blessing, you get a blessing, you get a blessing! Don't miss it.
Hey, you know, there's a thing called icing the kicker, all right? So in football, you have so many timeouts a coach might have. And so along with his preparation, he'll know in a game setting at the end of the game, they may be down or they may be tied, and the opposing team is basically here to win the game, and they have an extra timeout. What they can do right before the kicker will come up and kick it, he'll throw us the last final timeout. And what that does is, as a kicker, you kind of get in a mindset, okay, you're here, you're ready to go, and just as he's about to go, a whistle blows. It's called icing the kicker. And so that's what I'm doing right now, because I don't want Rob to make his second one, because I want to at least be able to time, because I missed my first. So timeout's over, ice is over. Go ahead, Rob.
Delay a game. Delay a game.
Man, he's good. Well, as you guys, I'll talk about this a little bit in my message. I did play football, but obviously I wasn't a kicker. That was very evident in my first kick. The sad thing is I actually tried kicking before you guys all got here like 10 times. So I've had practice and I still miss. So
it's terrible.
It's bad. It's bad. But what I want to talk to you guys about this morning is better together. It's always better together.
Amen.
Always. You know, as a young child, we've been taught this our whole lives. Sometimes we don't even really realize it, but through life and certain things, we've always been taught, you know, things are always better together. Certain things are always best when they're together. Oreos and?
Milk.
Milk. You got it. Cake and? You guys know this stuff. Cheese and? Ketchup and? Peanut butter and? We've been taught this our whole lives and we didn't know it. There are certain things that just go
soap and
together.
Water.
You can't have one without the other. Just not right. It's not complete. It's not complete. Better together. You know what else goes good together? Is us. We're always better when we're together. Yep, Camila, that's right. She agrees. It's my beautiful niece. I love her so much. But we are always better together. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 and 12 says this. It says, two people are better off than one, if they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. Something really important here. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble.
Amen.
Better together.
Yes.
In life, it's always nice to have somebody alongside. It's tough doing life alone. Some of us, let's just do it. Who knows it's a lot harder to do life alone? Yes, every hand should be up. I did life alone for 30 years, and then the Lord brought me my beautiful wife, and life is better together. Amen?
Amen.
It is better together. When you have someone, it is better together. You're not alone anymore.
Yes.
It's better together. Get a lot of amens on that. Amen. Better together. When I played football, Coach would always, he had this saying, like a lot of times, we had halftime. We just had our halftime. If we were down or if we were up, it really didn't matter. He would always say this before we'd go out. He says, no, you're not alone. Play as a unit. No, you're not alone. Play as a unit. See, in football, you have offense, defense, special teams. Then you have a lot of one-on-one battles. And he would always make sure we knew, again, up or down, it didn't matter. Because if you're up and you lost sight and you forgot that you weren't alone and you had a unit and you started playing by yourself, things could go bad real quick. Or on the flip side, if you were down, know that, hey, it doesn't have to stay like that. It's not just you out there. You have there's 11 players on each team on the field. 11 on defense, 11 on offense. So if I am a player on offense and we're down coming out in the third quarter, I don't have to do this alone. I've got 10 other guys in the field that are going to help me achieve the goal, and that's to get this stupid football across a little line.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the point of football. Get a football, that little thing, Rob, hold it up, throw it to me. It's a one-hand catch, ready? All right. Nice. So the key is to get this. So let's say this is the goal line. You know this whole thing doesn't even have to be over it.
Just a speck.
How stupid. If you think about it, like if you're going to do it, might as well but it doesn't even have to. So if this is a line, that's a touchdown. That nose, this is called the nose of the football. So this nose, it just has to break the plane. I'm teaching you guys some football language. It's just got to break the plane. So there's this big, nice white line. That's the end zone line. And that nose of that touchdown football just has to, nice catch, saved your life. So it just has to break the plane. That's it. You just got to break the plane. No, you're not alone. Play as a unit. You know, sometimes in life, we'll allow the enemy to kind of come in and we feel like we're all alone. We kind of isolate ourselves. Sometimes we go to our happy place or our quiet place and we just want to get alone and we're in a lot of stuff's going on and bad. And we feel like we're safe. Let me tell you, you're never safe when you're alone. You're never at a good place when you're by yourself. Life is always better when we're together. Always better when you're together. Don't believe the lie. Don't allow the enemy to come in and allow yourself to isolate and say, I got this. I can do this on my own. Can't do it. It's when problems start to happen. I want to tell you a little something about that happy place. It's not a good place to be. It's not happy when the enemy comes in and steals and robs, and that's what we know the enemy is out to do, right? Kill, steal, and destroy. That's his one goal. What's the goal of a defense? To not allow you to get that stupid football nose across that line. Mm-hmm. You know, we have a job to do, but the enemy has a job to do as well. And he's fierce. When I played football, we always knew, as Dan and Nate were talking about, knowing your opponent, and then you had a couple game changers. There were a few defenses that I remember playing. Venice they were always huge. It's so funny, my wife and I, we went and watched Palmetto play Venice last night. But Venice was always really big and really strong, and they were just fierce. They were nasty. They would hit you when you were down. So if you came to play, if your coach didn't, believe and prepare week in and week out and the whole season for Venice, they'll come in football it's called, they'll come and hit you in your mouth. They're going to come at you and they're going to hit you and they're not going to give you an inch. The enemy's the same way. He's fierce. There's power in numbers. We're always better together.
Yes.
You know, in football, Nate, Rob, if you guys come up here, in football, there is, talking about offense and defense, okay? And so bear with me a little bit. Nate, will come over here, Rob, you'll play on this side. Nate, you'll be over here. So there's a quarterback, Tom Brady, for the Patriots. This is a deflated football, so it's going to work, don't worry. So this, some of you guys may not. Okay, so anyways, there's a quarterback, Tom Brady for the Patriots. Again, then you'll have a receiver. If it's Atlanta side, we're talking about Julio Jones, like Dan was talking about. All right, and then you have a corner or a defensive back, okay? His job is not to let this guy catch the ball and get this football past this line. Make sense? Everyone following? Okay, so here we go. All right, bread and butter. Nate and I have been playing football together for a long time. Should work. Ready? Hike. All right, touchdown. Perfect. Just like the coach drew it up, right? All right, but the great thing is in football, guess what? Go ahead and get back up, Nate, Rob. See, what happens is, though, guess what? This guy's not alone, okay? This guy's not on in football, it's called don't put yourself on an island. An island is when it's just you and this person, and if this guy's really good and he does one little move and he gets around me, I'm on an island, I'm by myself, he scores a touchdown. What's great, you know there's a player in football in the defense called a safety? Isn't that funny? A safety. So maybe when you messed up or whatever, don't worry, there's a safety on the other side. There's a safety player that his position.
Oh.
All right. There's this position. So now, yeah, throw a whistle on that. I don't care. All right, here we go. So this is.
We have a challenge. I'm the referee.
You're
I am not a quarterback. So I'm feeling a lot of pressure right now. A lot of pressure. I think we need to go to the booth and have them review how this play is going to unfold.
I've paid them off. They said it was
Booth,
okay.
are you available?
Here we go.
See, here's the thing. The thing is, we always find out what their true colors are under pressure. What are you like under pressure? When you have the opposition breathing down your neck, saying you can't do the vision that God gave you. You can't do the things that are the creative inside of you that makes you tick and that God has placed in your heart. And you got somebody breathing down your neck saying you can't. You can't. Your true colors are going to show when the I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me shows up.
So that's fifth quarter. You got to stay. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so listen. So here. So now back to this. So we have a safety. I'm the safety on the defense, okay? So my job is not to let anything on the opposite side of me between the goal line, okay? So we're going to run the same play as we did before. So remember, Nate scored a touchdown, all right, because why? He was on an island, and he was by himself.
Safety or no safety, I'm still scoring.
Nate thinks he's going to score, but he's got his younger, stronger, more in shape brother that's going to show him a different thing. All right, so listen, this is what's going to happen. So now he can actually relax a little bit, right? Isn't it nice? Isn't it nice when you know you're not alone? You know that someone's got your back? In military, it's actually part of my message. Dad just went there for me. But in the military, it's called I got your six, okay? I got your back. 6 o'clock. I got your back, okay? So here we go. Let's try this. On safety, okay? Here we go.
Blue 17. 21-13. Hut, hut.
All right. So see what happens is there was a safety that played over top. Let me tell you guys something. There's a safety in each and every one of your life that's playing over your top.
Amen.
And that's Jesus. He's got your 6. Amen? You know what? When I was, my parents, and when I was, again, back to being taught we weren't alone. Man, I'm out of breath. All right. I got to get working with Jared. I need your help, bro. I'm out of shape. Amazing personal trainer here if you guys need anything. Go see your man, Jared. All right, here we go. Side note. It's cost him like $30,000 in the middle of, that's a commercial right there. That's a lot of money. So here we go. Who remembers when you were a little kid and you were going to the Disney World, to a theme park or a concert, and your parents had that kid leash? It's really what it is. You have this little harness you'd put on, and you're walking, all of a sudden you get yanked because your mom and your dad have this little leash, and they're not, right? So listen, isn't it funny that even as a child, what did I realize? I'm not walking alone. I got mom and dad, right? Here I go, I'm gonna go adventure. Whoa. Mom and dad always got me, right? They got my 6. I'm not alone wherever I go. And I remember as I grew up and started becoming in the youth, one of the big things my mom and dad and everybody, common sense, I guess, would always tell you is say, hey, don't go off by yourself. And I remember Jida would always tell me that. Always go off with a buddy. Actually, I want to do something real quick. In the fire service, we have a code. And I want to do something just a little crazy here. I'm going to call my best friend Lawrence, who I've grown up with. He's a firefighter. Lawrence Wingate. Hello. Lawrence, what's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, buddy?
What are you doing?
I'm at work. I'm saving lives fighting fire.
You're doing what?
I'm at work, buddy. I'm at work being a fireman today.
Okay, perfect. Hey, it actually works out. I didn't know you're working, but hey, today I'm actually have the opportunity to preach. Say hello. I'm at Resonate Life Church. I know this is really awkward for you. Say hi to everybody. So, hey, I'm talking to them about Better Together, and I remember when I was a firefighter, there was like a code. There was something we would always talk about in a fire and a scene as firefighters, but especially on a fire scene. What was that? Say that one more time. Turn this down a little bit, Jimmy. Say it one more time.
That's good. That's good.
All right, see you, man. Be safe.
Wow.
2 in, 2 out. You know, in a fire scene, for my safety, I had a partner. I had in the fire service, a band of brothers between the fire service is amazing. Some of you may have been law enforcement or military. Your family. He's got my 6. I know that I'm going in the fire, and I've got somebody with me. 2 in, 2 out. And guess what? God forbid, if I went in that fire, and I was with my best friend Lawrence, or any one of the other firefighters in the fire department, and stuff hit the fan and things went south, if he's not making it out, I'm not making it out. I'm not leaving him. I love my family. I love life. I'm not trying to get super emotional or crazy here, but what I want you to understand is I'm not leaving my brother. 2 came in. Two came out together. Either we're walking out together, or I'm carrying him, or he's carrying me, or there are two other people coming in and carrying us out together. I want you guys to understand that we are part of the greatest team. We are part of the greatest unit. And that's being a part of Jesus' team, being a part of a family, a church, and there's nothing like it.
Amen.
There's no greater team, there's no greater unit to be a part of. You want to know why? Jesus says, be of good courage, for I have overcome the world. We win. Every battle, everything we go into, we win. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I'm a part of a unit. I'm a part of a team, I'm a part of a family, and that's the family of God. Amen?
Amen.
You guys got a safety. I got your 6.
I'm not doing that. Yo,
the same way we say that, we have to do that for each other, not just say it. You know, sometimes I'm guilty. Oh, will you pray for me on this? Yeah, I'll pray for you. I don't pray for him, do I? We got to have each other's back. We got to be there for each other and ultimately stay a part of the family. Stay a part of the team, the unit. We got a safety in Jesus. He's always our help. He's always, there. We're never on an island by ourselves. We're not in it alone. We have a safety in Jesus. Amen?
Amen.
Amen. That's all I got for you.
Amen.
Man, that was a great third quarter. We even had some of our veterans come out of retirement, so I'm glad we made it out with no injuries.
They did pretty good. I'm pretty proud. They're better when they're together.
And just goes to prove just what we've always heard. There's no I in team. We're always there to encourage one another and pick each other up when someone else is struggling.
Amen.
Let's move on.
So close.
Just like the Florida Gators.
So close, so close. All right, I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you guys so much for having me speak. I'm Matt Shackelford. I'm the youth and children's pastor here. Thank you so much for having me. Y'all having a good morning this morning? Good time. Really enjoy this service, not because I'm a fan of football, because that is the exact opposite. I am the least caring about this particular day in American sports. Anybody, any other anti-sports fans in here? Holla! I am here for you. Do not worry. When I was a kid, the thing I wanted to be when I saw like the Super Bowl and stuff, I'm like, the mascot right there, I love that guy. That's exactly what I want to do. That guy with the big giant head and he's like dressed as an animal. There we go. That's going to be my job. I promise you, I'm not kidding at all. So real quick, I want to talk to you guys about the equipment that these guys wear. And for us, in our spiritual senses, we call this the armor of God. Yes. And my wife was pointing this out, and she was saying how, you know what? The equipment is meant to equip you. The equipment is meant to equip you.
Yes.
In Ephesians 6:10, it says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." If these guys go out there without their equipment, without their armor, without their battle gear, they're going to be hurting. It's not going to be a good thing. And believe it or not, I actually played football 1 year, freshman year of my high school career, and that was it. Because after that, I was like, it's good. I'll throw in the towel. We're done. I played it. Good stuff. Never again. That was like the last real organized sports thing I played. I grew up playing baseball, and I got into high school football. Just did that one particular year. And anybody know what the very first piece of equipment they actually put on for practice before they go full pads? There's only one piece of equipment they'll put on.
Helmet.
The helmet. That's the most important thing, considering your brain holds all the information as to what you're supposed to do as a football player. We would have this discipline and these things, these drills we would do, but with this one particular thing we had to do as players, we had these big metal bars. It was about yay high that we had put on, and we had helmets they put us on, and one of the most important things as far as direction in football, should you go high or low when you're wanting to hit someone? You want to go low, because the lower you get, the more whatever you have on them. This is the non-football player, people. Played 1 year, that was it. But they wanted you to go low because you have more ground on the guy in front of you. So they taught us this by putting helmets on us, thank God, and they had us run under these bars. They had us basically get down, do the little stance thing, and go forward. But we had to keep our heads low. One particular time, a guy not so lucky, thank God he at least had his helmet on, he didn't get very low. And the coaches are like, this is going to teach you the importance of getting down low. So they have these big metal bars that we're trying to go under. It's like if you don't go under it, you're going right into it. So these guys get down there like, all right, 3, 2, 1, whistle blow, do all the stuff, and they go. Everybody runs through, good stuff. Next drills, in line, go, next stuff, next guys. One dude, he was so tired. Sometimes it's easier just to stand straight up and do your thing. Not smart for Bubba. One of these guys, we called him Choo Choo. He was just huge. We called him a choo-choo train, but he wasn't very fast. He just he'll take you down. Not even on purpose sometimes. It's just run into you. So Bubba, Choo-choo, they're in their stance, and he gets up. We were running drills all day. We're tired. He gets up, and bink, goes right down. And the coaches just laugh and say, this is exactly why you wear your helmets, and this is exactly why you get low. There is very important, a big time importance on wearing the helmet. Not only that, but getting down low, making sure. But they taught us not just the importance of getting low, but the importance of our equipment. I don't exactly have a football helmet here, but this is more of a piece of armor, a good helmet of armor. And the most important piece of armor, just like in football, they put that on the very first. They practice with just that. Most important piece of armor is your helmet, because it's the helmet of salvation.
Yeah.
If you don't have salvation, if you don't have your life in Christ, if you don't have salvation in the Lord, everything else doesn't even matter. If you run out there with nothing but a helmet on, you're doing a little bit better than absolutely no armor, no equipment. I feel bad for the old times, the guys that had very little equipment at all. I keep wanting to say armor. The guys that had very little equipment. Anybody remember those or seen pictures of those where it was just the earmuff things and the old leather deals, and it's they practically wore nothing. They had their cleats and things, and basically wore just little. They just wore extra. Just wear extra layers. Just put on your wool coat, buddy. It'll pad you. That'll be nice. But there was hardly anything. They didn't even have any face masks or anything. Face masks. It was just nothing. So now we have some serious, awesome equipment. But again, the most important thing is the helmet. I think about these things when I wake up, and I'm like, you know what, God, help me put on the armor today. Help me walk in peace. Protect my heart. Help me to have that shield of faith. Help me have faith in you, to believe what you have for me. To help me to to guard my heart with the breastplate of righteousness. Help me to be a righteous person. Help me walk in righteousness. I don't think about like, God, just protect me. Put on the armor right now. It's not like a imaginary like armor plate that you put on. It's a spiritual thing. God, protect my mind. Protect my steps. Or take out anything that wants to come against me. More than anything, help me to walk in salvation. Help me to put on the helmet of salvation to protect me. If these guys go out there, they're listening to their coach, they're doing what they've told, they're being that game changer, they're being that awesome player, they're working together as a team. But if they don't put on the equipment, they are going to get jacked up. It is not going to be a good day for them. We're like, all right, I was listening to my coach. Awesome. I was working with the team. This is great stuff. I'm the best player out there. I am the game changer. But if you're so stupid to not wear your equipment, you deserve what you get.
Yeah.
Some of us say we don't need God. Some of us say we don't need that armor. I don't really need to have faith. I just need to do my very best at it. I need to work at these things. Maybe you say, you know what? I'm okay with salvation. I don't need God. I don't need faith. You know what? God doesn't need you either. But he created you. He made you for a purpose. You say, well, you know what? I don't even really even believe in God. I'm just here just because someone wanted me to come. You know what? God believes in you. He created this armor. He created this salvation for you to have.
Yes.
And all these things mean nothing if you don't take that gift, if you don't put on the equipment.
That's good.
Let me pray for you guys real quick. God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for this opportunity we have to celebrate you, how super you are, God. We thank you for the salvation that you give. And we thank you for this morning and all you're teaching us, God. We praise you for how you are moving at Resonate Life Church. We pray that each and every one of us here can take something from what you have for us today. We praise you for all these things. In Jesus' name, everybody said.
Amen.
Amen.
Yes, it is so important to have all the right equipment to protect you, because these guys are fierce, man. They'll come at you. Like Mike was saying earlier, you know, our other speaker, you know, if we're not ready, if we don't have our equipment on, I mean, come on, they're going to take us out. I mean, they want to win this game.
I sure don't want to be on that cart being rolled off that field. Lord, don't let me forget any equipment ever.
That's right. That's right. So important to have the helmet of salvation on all the time.
Amen. Let us get this game and get it going on the right direction.
Amen. You know, I think back to something Bob Cavany says, and it's really touched me, is you're either a saint or you ain't. And, you know, if we read our Bibles, you know, we're victorious. And you're either on the victorious team or you're on the losing team. And I'm not just talking to unsaved people in here, because for many years I was on the other team. I was the LeBron James, I was the Tom Brady, I was the Julio Jones for Satan. And about 6 years ago, I switched teams. I was a free agent, and I was just out there getting hurt every day. I didn't have all my equipment. I didn't respect my coach. I didn't prepare. And I was getting beat up every single day. But the crazy part was, I was doing exactly what my coach, Satan, wanted me to do. If he told me to lie, I lied. If he told me to steal, I stole. If he told me to gossip, I gossip. If he told me to do drugs and alcohol, I did drugs and alcohol. I was obedient to Satan, and then I switched teams, but he hasn't stopped trying to get me back. Even though I'm on the other team now, he doesn't quit. See, I was his best player, and when I left his team, his best player walked away, and now I'm on the other team, and he doesn't want that. And that's a lot of us sitting here today. We've made the switch from the team that's guaranteed to lose to the team that's guaranteed to win. but we're still getting attacks from the other team. See, for some reason, Satan hasn't read the back of the book because he loses. And he knows he loses, but he wants to see how many other people he can get to lose with him. There's no joy in his life. There's no peace in his life. There's no anything good in his life. So if he can take that away from us, even Christians, as you've heard me say last couple weeks ago, we can walk in the door and we can pretend that everything's fine and everything's good and everything's happy. But we all have some things that we really need to go to our coach about and say, what's the game plan for this? Give me some film footage. Give me some outline that I can learn how to conquer this, to beat this. So this morning, I'm not even going to ask you to close your eyes and bow your head, because I'm going to ask you if you've never received Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And if you close your eyes and bow your head, it really doesn't make a difference, because I'm going to ask you to come forward anyways. So this morning, if you are not on the winning team, if you're out there right now and you know that you're not on the winning team, that you're bound to lose this thing called life, then we need you to come forward, because God is accepting free agents every single moment. He wants you on your team. It doesn't matter if you can't catch. It doesn't matter if you can't throw. It doesn't matter any of that. He will give you every single tool you need to succeed. The Bible gives us every opportunity to win at everything in the world, and then the grace and mercy to not get the ball over the goal line every once in a while, to fail. And he still says, you're my best player. If you've never accepted him, you need to come forward and get your life on the right team. Amen? And then there's many of us sitting here that, like I said, we're going through things, and I want to just say a prayer as we get ready to close. So, a couple of the prayer team will be up here. If you've never accepted the new team and you want to be on the new team, then there'll be people up here that we can pray with you. But before we leave this morning, I just want you to go out of here just knowing that God's got your back, and I want you to go out victorious, because tonight there's going to be a lot of people cheering. It's a shame that tonight when Tom Brady scores, there's going to be half of us that stands up and screams and hollers and acts like raving maniacs. And then when the other team scores, Atlanta, we're going to be acting like raving maniacs. And then we leave here and we don't never say anything about Jesus. No excitement. No excitement. People will take their shirts off and stand in Lambeau Field at 30 degrees below zero and paint themselves gold and green. And we can't even tell someone, I'm a follower of Jesus and I read my Bible. We got to get serious, guys. The time's getting close. The time's getting close. So let's just pray, and then let's just go and get some good food in us and enjoy. But let's make sure that we give God all the glory, because not one player on the field, not one commercial, not one, any of that would ever be possible, any of it, if it wasn't for our Lord and Savior. So, Lord, we thank you this morning. We give you all praise and glory. I thank you for the men that spoke today, Lord, that poured out their hearts to this congregation, Lord. I ask that you would bless them immensely, Lord. Bless their families. What a great bunch of men that you're starting to raise up here at Resonate Life, Lord. Lord, your word in 1 Corinthians 10:13 says to act like men. And Lord, I see that happening at this church. People are starting to grow up and to grow stronger into you, Father God. Lord, I pray for every man in this room and every female in this room that right now might be saved. They might be on the right team, Lord, but they're going through some issues. Lord, I pray that today they would search you out like never before. That, Lord, they would come to the coach and say, help me to get through this. Help me to be victorious. Help me to get into the end zone so I can do my stupid, silly dance. Lord, we rejoice with you today just in all that you're doing. We thank you, Lord. I ask you bless every member here, Lord, every visitor here, Lord, until we meet again next week. Lord, I ask for protection and wisdom and knowledge and just your grace and mercy to follow us. You're such an amazing God. You truly are the game changer. You changed the game, God. You changed the game when you sent your son down here for us. We thank you for that, God. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. And all God's people said, amen and amen. Don't forget Wednesday nights. We're here. Come on in and join us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everybody. Just a couple quick announcements. Next Sunday, Terry Tripp. You don't want to miss him, as well as the membership classes. The Sunday after that, there is a Bloodmobile going to be here, and you can start signing up right now, right on this round table. There's 2 people who can sign up every 15 minutes. That's happening 2 Sundays from now, but go ahead and get your name and get your slot taken care of. God bless you. Have a super Sunday. Remember, thanks be unto God who always causes us to triumph in Christ. Amen.
There's a comfort in the mighty name of Jesus. Oh.